The Varians had always considered themselves the apex of galactic evolution. For millennia, they had explored the cosmos, cataloging thousands of species across hundreds of worlds. None had approached their level of technological advancement or cognitive capacity. Their neural networks, both biological and artificial, operated on principles that allowed them to process information at rates that seemed to approach the theoretical limits of computational possibility. Then the humans arrived. The first contact was benign enough. A simple radio transmission from a distant blue planet. The Varian Council had dismissed it initially, categorizing Earth as another developing world worth monitoring but not engaging. Standard protocol. Fleet Commander Toran recalled that day with perfect clarity, despite the passage of nearly 50 cycles. He had been a junior analyst then, tasked with routine signal monitoring in the outer reaches of Varian space. "Sir, I'm detecting an unusual pattern," he had reported to his superior, Officer Mira. "The emissions from Sol 3 have changed significantly." Mira had examined his findings with typical Varian detachment. Interesting, but hardly unprecedented. Many species discover nuclear technology and subsequently advance their communication capabilities. This is different, Toran had insisted. The mathematical complexity suggests they're not just communicating, they're searching. And the rate of technological progression is anomalous. Within just 10 cycles, the anomaly had become impossible to ignore. The humans had progressed from primitive radio signals to detailed interstellar probes, then to faster-than-light theoretical frameworks that the Varian Science Division had only recently begun to conceptualize. Now, as Toran stood before the Council Chamber's viewing portal, watching the approaching human delegation vessel, he felt an unfamiliar sensation rippling through his neural pathways. The ship wasn't particularly large or imposing by Varian standards, but something about its design, efficient yet unpredictable, triggered an uncomfortable response. "They shouldn't be here yet," whispered Elder Zenith, the Council's oldest member. "Our models predicted at least another century before any contact." Toran nodded. "Their development curve defies all established patterns. They've accomplished in decades what took us millennia." The human vessel's approach was measured and deliberate, showing none of the hesitation or awe that other species typically displayed upon first encountering Varian technology. Their communications were clear and structured, requesting rather than pleading for diplomatic engagement. "Have the psychological division prepared their analysis?" asked Zenith. "Yes, Elder. Lead psychologist Lena has been studying human communication patterns since we detected their first interstellar transmissions, but she admits that their cognitive processes remain largely unpredictable." The council chamber fell silent as the human ship executed a perfect docking maneuver, aligning with the Varian station without guidance. Lena's voice came through the neural link, uncharacteristically hesitant. "Preliminary assessment suggests a species with remarkable adaptive capabilities. They appear to utilize multiple, sometimes contradictory thought patterns simultaneously. Their decisions often incorporate both logic and something they term intuition, a concept that has no direct translation in our language." Toran felt that strange sensation again, stronger now, as the airlock indicators showed atmospheric synchronization. In moments, they would face these humans directly. "Is there a term for what I'm experiencing, Lena?" he asked through a private neural channel. Her response came after a pause. "The closest approximation in our lexicon would be anticipatory uncertainty. Humans might call it anxiety, though none of the Varians knew this yet." The airlock cycled open. The humans didn't look particularly threatening. This was Toran's first thought as they emerged from the airlock. 5 beings of average stature, clothed in simple but evidently functional attire. Their bipedal form was common enough among evolved species, though something about their gait suggested a peculiar efficiency of movement. What struck Toran immediately was their eyes. Unlike the uniform optical sensors of the Varians, human eyes displayed remarkable variation in color and expression. and they moved constantly, scanning the chamber with a speed that seemed almost predatory. "Greetings," said the foremost human, a female with short gray hair. "I am Captain Anna Reed of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. We come with peaceful intent and hope for mutual exchange." The translation matrix rendered her words perfectly, but Torin detected subtle variations in vocal tone that the technology couldn't quite capture. Something in her speech pattern conveyed both authority and warmth, a paradoxical combination by Varian standards. Elder Zenith stepped forward, performing the traditional greeting gesture. "The Varian Collective welcomes you. I am Elder Zenith, and this is Fleet Commander Toran, who first detected your species' transmissions." Captain Reed's eyes fixed on Torin, with an intensity that triggered an involuntary neural response. "Then we owe you our gratitude, Commander. First contact is always a pivotal moment in any civilization's history." "Always?" inquired Lena, unable to contain her professional curiosity. "Your species has previous experience with extraterrestrial contact." A slight curve appeared on Reed's mouth, a smile Torin recalled from the briefing materials. "No, psychologist Lena. Earth has not encountered other intelligent life before today. I was speaking hypothetically." The casual way she had anticipated Lena's role without introduction sent a ripple of unease through the Varian delegation. The humans were observing and deducing at a rate that defied their predicted cognitive capabilities. Over the next several hours, the initial diplomatic exchange proceeded with surprising smoothness. The humans presented information about Earth's history, cultural diversity, and technological development. What they revealed was both fascinating and deeply unsettling to the Varian observers. Earth had nearly destroyed itself multiple times through war, environmental degradation, and social conflict. Yet somehow, these near-extinction events had accelerated human innovation rather than impeding it. They had developed technologies along entirely different paths than the Varians, sometimes discovering efficient solutions that the Varian scientific community had overlooked despite millennia of methodical research. During a scheduled recess, Torin conferred with Lena in a private chamber. "Their cognitive patterns are remarkable," Lena said, her neural network displaying signs of intense activity. "They appear to embrace contradiction rather than resolving it. They simultaneously hold opposing viewpoints, create art that celebrates imperfection, and derive meaning from concepts that cannot be empirically validated." Torin's discomfort had grown throughout the meeting. "Are we in danger? Not physically, perhaps, but conceptually." Lena considered this question longer than a Varian typically would. "I believe we are experiencing the first stages of a profound paradigm shift. The humans don't merely represent another intelligent species, they represent an entirely different approach to intelligence itself." When the diplomatic team reconvened, one of the humans, a male called Dr. Marcus Gray, requested permission to share some human creative expressions. What followed was a selection of music, visual art, and literary passages that left the Varian delegation in a state of neural dissonance. The compositions followed no predictable patterns yet created a sense of coherence. The narratives explored impossible scenarios with emotional resonance that transcended their fictional nature. The artwork captured imperfect moments that somehow conveyed universal significance. As the presentation concluded, Captain Reed addressed the now silent Varians. "We believe that understanding each other's creative expressions is as important as sharing technological knowledge. This is how humans come to know one another, not just through what we know, but through what we imagine." Torin found himself unable to formulate a standard diplomatic response. For the first time in his existence, he was experiencing something beyond uncertainty. It was wonder. The Varian High Council had never convened an emergency session in the memory of any living member. Their governance structure, refined over thousands of cycles, operated on principles of predictive management that prevented crises before they emerge. Yet here they were, 3 cycles after first contact, gathered in the ancient deliberation chamber beneath the surface of the Varian homeworld. "Our foundational assumptions are under threat," declared Elder Zenith, his neural patterns displaying unusual fragmentation. The human delegation has presented 47 distinct philosophical frameworks that directly contradict our universal theory of consciousness. Each framework is internally consistent yet mutually exclusive with the others. Toran observed the proceedings with growing concern. The humans had departed the previous day, returning to their ship with promises of continued diplomatic relations. They had left behind a wealth of information about Earth culture, history, and science, offered freely and without apparent strategic calculation. This generosity was itself confounding to the Varian leadership. "They call it open exchange," explained Lena, who had been appointed chief liaison to the human delegation. "The concept appears to be that sharing knowledge accelerates mutual growth, even when such sharing offers no immediate advantage. Or perhaps especially when it offers no immediate advantage," added Toran. "Their game theory operates on principles we haven't fully decoded yet." The central holographic display showed a geometric representation of Varian neural architecture, a model that had remained essentially unchanged for millennia. Beside it hovered a chaotic, constantly shifting visualization of human neural patterns based on the medical data the humans had provided. "The implications are significant," said Council Member Vex, whose specialty was evolutionary optimization. "Our society has been structured around the principle that logical consistency leads to optimal outcomes. The humans have demonstrated that inconsistency, even irrationality, can produce innovation at rates that exceed our own." Reports were flooding in from across Varian space. News of the human contact had spread rapidly through the collective neural network, and for the first time in recorded history, the response was not uniform. Some communities expressed fascination and eagerness for further contact. Others advocated for immediate isolation to prevent cognitive contamination. Still others were experiencing neural pattern disruptions that the medical division classified as existential uncertainty. The Varians had no concept of identity crisis until now. Toran had been experiencing his own neural disruptions. Since the diplomatic meetings, he had found himself engaging in activities with no clear purpose, staring at natural formations for extended periods, attempting to create visual representations without functional objectives, even deliberately introducing small irregularities into his daily routines. "Commander Toran," Elder Zenith's voice pulled him back to the present. "You've had the most direct contact with the humans. What is your assessment of their intentions?" Toran considered his response carefully. "I believe they are sincere in their desire for peaceful exchange. However, I don't think they fully comprehend the impact their presence has on our collective psychology. To them, cognitive diversity is not just normal, it's celebrated. The concept that their ideas might fundamentally destabilize another species would be troubling to them." Lena interjected, her neural patterns showing unusual spontaneity. "I've been analyzing the human concept of art as a cognitive tool. They use these non-functional creations to process contradictions and explore alternative realities. It serves as a type of psychological infrastructure that allows them to adapt to radical change." The council chamber fell silent as the implications settled into their collective understanding. "Are you suggesting," Vex finally asked, "that we need to develop art?" "I'm suggesting that we need to develop new cognitive frameworks altogether," Lena replied. "The humans didn't outpace our technological development because their science is superior. They outpaced us because their relationship with uncertainty is fundamentally different from ours." Toran watched as the council members' neural patterns displayed varying degrees of dissonance. The very idea that uncertainty might be embraced rather than eliminated challenged the core principles of Varian civilization. 6 months into the human-Varian cultural exchange program, the changes were becoming impossible to ignore. What had begun as a carefully controlled diplomatic initiative had evolved into something far more pervasive. Toran walked through the central district of the capital, noting the subtle but significant alterations to the once uniform landscape. Here and there, Varian architects had introduced asymmetrical elements to traditional structures. Public spaces now featured installations with no apparent function beyond stimulating neural responses, what humans would call art galleries. Most striking were the gathering places where Varians engaged in the newly established practice of unstructured discourse, conversations without predetermined objectives or conclusions. It's remarkable how quickly they're adapting, observed Dr. Lisa Park, the human cultural anthropologist who had been assigned as Toren's counterpart. I would have expected more resistance. Toren considered this as they continued their regular observation route. Varian neural structure allows for rapid integration of new information once logical frameworks are established. The challenge was not in implementing changes, but in accepting that change itself could be beneficial rather than merely necessary. Lisa smiled, a facial expression Toren had become increasingly adept at interpreting. That's very Varian of you, finding a logical explanation for embracing illogic. Is that paradoxical? Beautifully so. The exchange centers established in major population hubs had become the most visible symbols of the ongoing transformation. There, Varians and the small contingent of human delegates engaged in knowledge transfer that ranged from formal scientific collaboration to cooking lessons. The latter had been particularly revolutionary, as Varians discovered that nutrition could be more than mere sustenance. It could be a sensory experience. Not all reactions had been positive. A movement calling itself neural purity had emerged among older generations, advocating for limited contact with humans and preservation of traditional Varian cognitive patterns. Their concerns were not entirely without merit. Some Varians, particularly younger ones, were experiencing integration difficulties as they attempted to adopt human-style thinking too rapidly. The Varian Medical Division had developed a new specialty focusing on what they termed cognitive harmonization, helping individuals balance traditional Varian logical processes with newly emerging intuitive capacities. Commander Toren, a neural alert interrupted his thoughts. Elder Zenith requests your presence at the council chamber immediately. Toren excused himself from Lisa and made his way to the government complex. Upon arrival, he found the council in full session, the chamber's atmosphere charged with unusual emotional intensity. We've received a concerning report, Zenith began without preamble. A group of humans from outside the diplomatic contingent has arrived in Varian space. They claim to represent commercial interests seeking to establish trade relationships independently of official channels. Toren processed this information quickly. This aligns with what we know of human social structures. Their society isn't unified under a single authority. It contains numerous independent entities with divergent objectives. Precisely what concerns us, replied Vex. Our agreements were with Earth's unified diplomatic corps. These corporate representatives operate under different parameters, different motivations, Toren corrected gently, employing the human distinction between method and purpose that he'd found increasingly useful. The council displayed varying degrees of discomfort with this nuance. We request that you contact Captain Reed, Zenith said. We need to understand if these new arrivals represent a breach of our existing agreements or an expected development. When Reed's image appeared on the communication array, her expression confirmed Toren's suspicions before she spoke a word. I apologize for this complication, Commander, she said. These corporate scouts aren't operating under diplomatic authorization, but they aren't technically in violation of any laws either. Earth governance has limitations on controlling private enterprise that would be difficult for Varians to understand. You anticipated this would happen, Toren observed. Reed nodded. We hope to have more time to prepare your people for the full complexity of human society. The diplomatic corps represents our best intentions, but we're not the entirety of humanity. After the call concluded, Toren faced the council's expectant gaze. This development was inevitable, he stated. The humans are not a collective. They are billions of individuals with distinct objectives, values, and methods. What we have experienced so far is a carefully curated representation. 50 years after first contact, the Varian homeworld was unrecognizable to anyone who had known it before. The once uniform cityscape now displayed a striking blend of traditional geometric precision and organic, seemingly random elements inspired by human design principles. The changes went far deeper than mere aesthetics. Varian society itself had transformed in ways that would have been unimaginable to previous generations. The rigid hierarchical structure had given way to a more fluid organization that balanced collective harmony with individual variation. Toran, now serving as ambassador to Earth rather than military commander, stood on the observation deck of the orbital platform, watching the arrival of the latest transport from human space. Beside him, his longtime colleague Lena reviewed population statistics on her neural interface. Another 3,000 human immigrants this cycle, she noted, and nearly 500 Varians returning from educational exchanges on Earth. The integration protocols are working remarkably well. Toran nodded, his aged features displaying the subtle expressiveness that had become common among Varians who worked closely with humans. The neural compatibility treatments have eliminated most of the adjustment issues we saw in the early years, though I sometimes wonder if we're losing something essential in the process. A very human concern, Lena observed with gentle amusement. Perhaps that's evidence the integration works in both directions. Below them, the capital city gleamed in the late afternoon light. The newly completed Forum of Perspectives, a massive structure designed collaboratively by human and Varian architects, dominated the central district. Unlike the uniform council chambers of the past, the Forum featured hundreds of unique spaces designed to facilitate both logical discourse and creative exploration. The latest reports from the scientific division showed the results of this new approach. Varian research output had increased by over 300% since the adoption of human-inspired collaborative methods. What they had sacrificed in methodical thoroughness, they had more than gained in creative innovation. Perhaps most significantly, the Joint Human-Varian Deep Space Initiative had recently confirmed the existence of 3 more technologically advanced species in nearby galactic sectors. 2 of these had been aware of the Varians for centuries, but had avoided contact due to the Varians' rigid thought patterns. The third was entirely new to both humans and Varians. The delegation from the Mirai arrives next week. Toran reminded Lena. Their communications suggest a species with yet another distinct cognitive approach. I've reviewed the preliminary data, Lena replied. Their neural structure appears to process information collectively rather than individually, similar to our ancestral state, but far more advanced. The humans are quite excited about the possibilities. Toran smiled at this understatement. The human scientific community had barely contained their enthusiasm at the prospect of encountering a genuinely collective consciousness. Their adaptability, the very quality that had so disrupted Varian society, made them ideal intermediaries for this new contact. As they watched, a small vessel detached from the incoming transport and approached the platform. It carried Anna Reed, no longer captain but ambassador emeritus, making what would likely be her final visit to Varian space. Though advanced in age even by human standards, she had remained a central figure in the ongoing relationship between the two species. She was right, you know, Toran said softly as they prepared to greet her. That very first day when she spoke of first contact as a pivotal moment in a civilization's history, I don't think even she understood how profound the change would be. The airlock cycled open, revealing Reeves supported by a mobility assistance device, a subtle blend of human medical technology and Varian neural interface design. Ambassador Toran, psychologist Lena, she greeted them warmly. Still monitoring arrival patterns after all these years. Old habits, Toran acknowledged, though the view continues to change. Reed moved to the viewport, gazing down at the transformed world below. I hardly recognize it anymore. It's beautiful in an entirely new way. We are planning the centennial commemoration, Lena informed her. The council wishes for you to speak at the main ceremony. Reed's expression turned reflective. 50 years since we burst into your orderly universe and turned everything upside down. Are there still those who think it was a mistake? Fewer each year, Torin replied honestly. The evidence has become difficult to dispute. Both our species have achieved more together than either could have alone. As they spoke, the neural network alert chimed softly. The three turned their attention to the latest transmission from the Joint Exploration Fleet, a real-time feed from a previously uncharted system near the galactic core. The images showed a massive artificial structure orbiting a binary star, technology far beyond either human or Varian capabilities. Initial scans detected no life signs, suggesting an automated installation or perhaps a relic of a long-vanished civilization. "Here we go again," Reed said, her aged eyes bright with the same curiosity that had characterized humanity's first steps into the cosmos. Another paradigm shift waiting to happen. Torin felt that familiar sensation, the one that humans called wonder and Varians had once mistaken for dysfunction. It had become not just acceptable but celebrated in their new shared culture. Perhaps that's the true psychological impact of human arrival, he reflected. Not the specific changes you brought, but teaching us to embrace change itself as an essential component of growth. The three watched in comfortable silence as the exploration vessel began its approach to the mysterious structure, human adaptability, and Varian precision working in perfect harmony to face the unknown together. A new chapter in their shared story was about to begin.